In some of the recent episodes, we've been discussing nutrition and diabetes and some of the chronic illnesses patients face. And a lot of that has to do with their food choices, their diet. It's important for us as a healthcare professional to really take a look at what restrictions our patients have. We have patients that come in that have limitations on their food sources for a variety of reasons. Some of them are by choice, and some of them are by socioeconomic status. Some of them are cultural. Some of them are just access. So it's important for us to really dive deep into understanding how our patients eat, what our patients eat, when our patients eat, and the food choices and how they impact. So, in this specific episode, we're going to focus solely on proteins and how proteins impact how our patients present in the dental setting. Let's take a listen. Hey everyone, welcome to the Happy Flosser podcast. My name is Billy Lunt. I am your host, and I am here to talk to you about all things dental hygiene to support you on your journey through the dental hygiene program. Welcome, so glad to have you. Are you looking for study sheets? I've created study sheets that cover the content of this episode. If you're interested or that's something that's going to help you on your learning journey, you can click the link listed right in the description of these show notes. Happy studying! Hey, are you in dental hygiene school or just got your acceptance letter and just started dental hygiene school and you're worried about how you're going to fit it all in, what the evaluations are like, what the key strategies you need to set up in order to be successful? You don't want to have worked all this time to get accepted into dental hygiene school only to make some pretty major errors in your first and second semester. I've put together a course that will really help you set yourself straight right out of the gate and get yourself started on the right foot in dental hygiene school. Whether or not you're just entering school or you've done your prerequisites and you're just well on your way halfway through, this course is designed to help get you straight and keep you straight so that you can become a dental hygienist. Click the link in the show notes and check it out. Proteins, by definition, are just a long chain of molecules that contain long chains of amino acids. And they are essential for body tissues, things like muscles and hair. They are required for the function and the regulation of organs and tissues. Proteins yield amino acids when they're hydrolyzed. Now, think about all of your different types of patients. You have vegans and vegetarians and pescatarians, and then you have meat eaters. You have patients who've had surgery, right? They've had bypass or some kind of gastric surgery that limits their ability to digest things the same way. So, it's important for you to understand the role and function of protein and how that impacts your patient based on the food choices that they have. So, hydrolysis, by definition, is just the splitting of large molecules into smaller water molecules so that they can be used by the cells. And that reaction requires the addition of water. Now, amino acids are the building blocks of proteins, and they're made up of an amino and a carboxylic acid, which is the functional group. Now, remember, the classification, there's 20 amino acids that we classify. The essential amino acids, those are the ones that can't be manufactured by the body in an adequate amount. So these must be supplied by foods. Because the body can't create them themselves, this is where it's important for you to know the food choices that your patient has or the diet restriction that your patient has so that you understand if they're getting those essential amino acids. Because why do you think we call them essential? Because they're essential. Now, non-essential amino acids, they can be made in adequate amounts to meet the needs of the body. Conditionally indispensable amino acids are essential in certain disease states or in certain stages of development. So there are times in growth and development that some of those amino acids are more important than other times in the life cycle. Those are called conditionally indispensable amino acids. It's important to know that there are special situations when a non-essential amino acid can become essential. An example of this, the body normally makes tyrosine from phenylalanine. PKU is a genetic disorder that's inherited when both the parents carry the recessive gene. Now, parents might not be they might not have any signs or symptoms that they carry this genetic disorder. So children are screened when they're a newborn to find out. And it's estimated that one out of about 10,000 births have decreased activity in this. And there's a higher incidence in Caucasians and Native Americans, and lower incidence among African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians for this genetic disorder. So when our patients have PKU, there's no cure for it, but it can be managed with a special diet. And since all foods with protein contain PHE, a person who has PKU has to restrict the amount and types of foods that they eat that contain protein. It's a diet with vegetables and fruits that have limited amounts, that have those complementary smaller amount proteins. And usually patients also have a drink of a special formula that they have, and it supplies additional protein that the body needs for growth and maintenance without those amino acids so that that patient can have fewer challenges. Patients who have PKU are just monitored with routine blood work just to make sure that the levels are maintaining because it can build up in their system. Let's talk about nitrogen balance. In a healthy individual, nitrogen is balanced. You have a negative nitrogen balance and you have a positive nitrogen balance. So with a negative nitrogen balance, the patient with an illness or a burn excretes more nitrogen than is ingested. When a patient has a positive nitrogen balance, this is seen in patients in development or child or pregnant women when they're either developing or developing someone, and there's more protein that is retained than lost, and this can cause a positive nitrogen balance. It's also important for us to know there's different qualities in the protein intake that our patients have. So high quality proteins those are considered complete proteins, and those generally come from animals, meat, fish, milk, and eggs. All the essential amino acids provide enough amounts to sustain adequate growth and development when you have a patient who routinely eats these food items because we know they are receiving complete proteins. Now, low quality proteins, these are incomplete proteins. And in situations like that, the food is missing one or more of the essential amino acids that are required for adequate growth and development. Incomplete proteins are found in things like legumes, greens, and vegetables. And you will find that there are a lot of patients that do not eat things like meat, fish, milk, and eggs for a variety of reasons. So it's important for you to know the quality of the protein that your patient is consuming and where they're getting their essential amino acids. Now, when you have a patient who is consuming inadequate proteins, there's a link in the chain called complementary proteins. Now, what are complementary proteins? It's when two or more proteins contain amino acids that complement each other in a way where the patient ends up receiving an adequate amount of protein. So legumes and grains together provide the complementary proteins that a patient needs. Legumes provide an effective amount of amino acids of isoleucine and lysine, and grains fall short in these two amino acids. But don't worry, grains pick up the pace on methionine and tryptophan. So when you consume the legumes and the grains together, they complement one another and they work together to provide the correct amount of all four of those essential amino acids. This is the collective process in nutrition that helps patients obtain the proteins from different sources of foods in order to meet their nutritional needs. When you're thinking about protein daily requirements, what the daily recommended intake is of protein, what I also want you to think about is your own experience when you are working with patients in the clinical setting. If you ask patients certain questions about their nutrition, they're going to be very broad and vague about their response. So sometimes you need follow-up questions to make sure that your patient is obtaining the proper daily recommended intake. For example, I am a vegetarian. If somebody asks me if I am vegetarian, I'm going to say I'm vegetarian, or if they ask me my diet preferences, I'll say I'm vegetarian. But upon further questioning, you'll discover that I'm not truly vegetarian. I'm actually pescatarian because I do eat and consume fish products, which would change the concerns that you would have as a clinician. So if I just told you I was vegetarian, you might assume that that means I don't eat any animal products, milk or eggs or fish, but that's simply not true. I do eat milk, eggs, fish, and cheese. So there is lots of variation on what your patients report to you and what they're actually consuming. And there's so many different variations of what people eat and why they eat what they eat. So these are the follow-up questions that you want to have with your patient as you're trying to figure out if they're meeting their protein requirements. So the daily intake is zero point 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So, yep, we have to do that translation here. So, if a woman weighs 130 pounds, you would simply just do 130 pounds divided by 2.2, right? So, to find the protein recommendation, you have to convert the pounds to kilograms by dividing pounds by 2.2. So, 130 pounds divided by 2.2 is 59 kilograms. And then you'll multiply the kilograms by zero point 0.8 in order to find out the total grams of what's recommended for protein. So an acceptable intake of protein is 10 to 35% of the kilocalories. So what does this translate down to as far as food consumption? So if you're doing a 3-day dietary analysis on your patient, you're going to be looking for consumption of a variety of protein-containing foods. So in the meat and bean group for an average woman, you want to see about 5 to 5.5 ounces of consumption. And in the dairy group for women, you want to see about 3 cups of dairy consumed, whether that's yogurt or milk or cheese in some variety. Now, sources of protein are meat and milk, and those provide the most protein. Soy also contains protein and has other benefits to it, but there are some patients who are sensitive to soy. Now, we can't rule out quinoa, which has about 6 grams of protein in a half of a cup. My Plate recommends 5.5 ounces of cooked lean meat, poultry, or fish daily for adults in order to meet those daily recommended intake. But remember, I said there's complementary proteins. So if your patient isn't consuming meat, and there are patients who consume meat, they just don't consume as much meat or they don't do it on a daily basis. So those are factors you want to consider as well when you're looking at those complementary proteins that support one another. So, why do you think this is important for us as healthcare providers to really understand the depth of protein intake for our patients? When our patients underconsume proteins and there's a deficiency in their intake of protein, it does alter their ability to heal and they will have suppression of their immune system. So during the growth and development stage, right, so pregnant women, child, and adolescents, you can see things like delayed eruption patterns, a reduction in the development of the salivary glands, which could result in reduced salivary flow, which we know increases caries risk. We can also see a change in the salivary protein consumption, amylase, and aminopeptidase, which that activity comprises the immune function and the role in saliva. So you can have an uptick in when there's a change in the salivary protein composition, amylase and aminopeptidase, that activity reduces the immune function and the role that saliva plays in defending ourselves against some of the pathogens in the mouth. In malnourished children, the secretory immunoglobulin A levels are also decreased. Kwashiorkor is a form of severe protein malnutrition, and it's usually caused by having sufficient calorie intake but insufficient protein consumption, or lack of that really good quality protein. Marasmus is a form of severe malnutrition, and it's a chronic condition over a long period of time where there's a lack of protein. It can be distinguished from kwashiorkor because of inadequate energy intake in all forms, including protein. You'll see distinct muscle atrophy of patients that have marasmus. Higher risk are children, older adults, and homeless populations. Overconsumption of protein can also happen. When there's excess protein, it converts to fat, and it does create a higher risk of obesity. It can also cause a fluid imbalance within the cells. Now, many high-protein foods are also high in saturated fat and cholesterol, and these have both been connected to cardiovascular disease as well as some cancers. High-protein diets are really beneficial for weight control, and this happens by way of enhancing the loss of body fat with less loss of muscle loss. And the additional benefit is that it has improved control of blood glucose levels. And we have seen this with some diet recommendations. Nutritional considerations for patients is that animal sources of protein are costly, the most costly source, and they can be supplemented with some plant proteins. Some patients don't prefer animal proteins, so you want to be able to provide them with alternative food sources, thinking about those complementary proteins. Suggest that patients add cheese or milk to soups or potatoes to increase their exposure to those complementary proteins. It's important to actually understand what and how patients consume their foods. Refer the complex situations to a registered dietitian or a medical health professional, especially if your patient has comorbidities or they're having real challenges with adequate food intake. Remember, some of those empty calories or inadequate sources of protein, where a patient gets plenty of calories but not enough really enriched calories, it's important to seek the advice of others and have that interprofessional collaboration to meet the needs of your patients. I would invite you to send me any questions that you need answered. Questions come up when you listen to this podcast. I have a link in the show notes, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Also, I would appreciate a review if you have time to leave one. Thank you so much.